What is a speech pathologist? A speech pathologist is a professional who helps people that have problems with communicating and swallowing. They create individualised programs using a process of evidence-based practice. This involves using their clinical expertise, the best current research available, and taking the client's needs, values and beliefs into account to create an intervention program that best suits the client. Speech pathologists work with a wide variety of people ranging from children, adolescents, the elderly, people who have suffered a trauma or have a degenerative disease. Because of this, speech pathologists have to be aware of developmental milestones in communication across all ages and disorders that affect communication and swallowing. Speech pathologists work in a wide variety of settings, including schools, nursing homes, hospitals, universities, and specialist situations such as working with people with autism spectrum disorder. Language is how we communicate with others. It's the messages we send and receive. ASHA, the American Speech Language Hearing Association, defines language as being made up of socially shared rules that include semantics, syntax, and pragmatics. Receptive language is the ability to understand the language being spoken. It is the input of language. Expressive language is the ability to put thoughts and ideas into words and sentences using correct vocabulary and grammar. It is the output of language. A child who has a receptive or expressive language delay may be described as having an SLI, specific language impairment. Specific language impairment is the name given to difficulties with language that have no neurological, sensory, intellectual or emotional deficit. Speech is the verbal means of communicating and consists of articulation, voice and fluency. Articulation is how speech sounds are made. Voice is the use of vocal folds to produce sounds. And fluency is the rhythm and flow of speech. Speech disorders may present in the form of children leaving out sounds at the start or end of words, or they may also substitute some sounds for others. For example, T for C and say tup for cup, or they may have a stutter. Speech pathologists are qualified to identify and assess swallowing disorders. Swallowing disorders are called dysphagia. To assist speech pathologists in identifying and assessing communication and swallowing disorders, Speech Pathology Australia endorse and use the ICF. The ICF is the International Classification of Functioning Disability and Health Framework for 18 years and over and was developed by the World Health Organization. It is intended to be a universal classification system, meaning that it is about all people, not just people with disabilities. There is also an ICF Youth Edition, which is for children from birth to 17 years of age. To ensure that high quality of care and service is provided by speech pathologists and the integrity of the profession is maintained, all speech pathologists must meet a certain standard of professionalism and skill in their practice. They must meet criteria in the Competency-Based Occupational Standards Framework, the CBOS. This framework dictates the minimum skills, knowledge base and professional standards required for entry-level practice in speech pathology in Australia. Some of the skills listed in the CBOS include interpersonal skills, collaborating with others, teamwork and counselling. Coming to terms with a child with a communication or swallowing disorder can be very confronting for some parents, so it's important as a speech pathologist to have strong interpersonal skills. Speech pathologists need to be able to counsel parents and families and offer support and help, all the while taking into account the family's beliefs and values. There is the need to take into account the family's expertise of their child and work together to put an intervention plan into practice. They should adopt a family-centred approach and involve a combination of strengths and skills from both the family and the speech pathologist equally. Speech pathologists need to be culturally sensitive to the needs of families and be aware of language variation across different cultures. The rules of communication may be different in a family's culture to their own, and speech pathologists need to take this into account. As well as the CBOS, speech pathologists must also adhere to a code of ethics, which covers the values, principles, and standards of practice required by the profession. This code of ethics dictates how a speech pathologist must act when dealing with clients. Speech pathologists need to ensure that they treat all clients without prejudice based on age, sex, race, religion, or socio-economic status. Every client is entitled to the same quality of care as each other, regardless of background. There is so much more to being a speech pathologist than just helping children learn how to communicate better. Speech pathologists engage and interact with people of all ages from many different backgrounds and cultures who present with a varied number of disorders. To be able to provide the best practice, speech pathologists need technical skills, such as knowledge of communication development and impairments, and they need interpersonal skills to deal with families in potentially sensitive situations, and they need to meet the minimum standards set out by the CBOS and Code of Ethics. To be a successful speech pathologist, they need to be an educator, communicator, nurse, counsellor, therapist, entertainer, motivator, statistician, and researcher. One job title, many hats.